Hello everyone and welcome to Merlin Reviews. Today we'll be reviewing a slasher film from 2004 called Dark Harvest. It follows a young man who decides to take his friends to an old farm in West Virginia, which he has recently inherited from his estranged father. Little do they know, his ancestor performed gruesome rituals to improve his crop, murdering 3 men and using their bodies as scarecrows, so their blood would soak into the soil. Now the scarecrows will come alive and take revenge on that same bloodline. You know, every once in a while, a subscriber request comes along that just really surprises you. This one comes from the same individual who requested that obscure vampire movie a little while ago. Somehow they topped it with a horror film even more obscure. Now I'll admit, I wasn't really excited about the prospect of this movie. This was mostly based on the box art. Considering it came out in the early 2000s, I thought it would be something thrown together by a studio as one of those throwaway horror movies of the time. I was kind of expecting something in between Urban Legends or Jeepers Creepers. You know, something pretty standard, fairly competent, I guess, but ultimately forgettable. When I turned this movie on, though, I was introduced to something totally unexpected. This film is not a standard throwaway low-budget horror flick from the early 2000s. Nope. It's a micro-budget, Z-level horror film that looks like it was made by a small group of amateur movie fans as a rather ambitious home movie project. Now, you may think this sounds terrible, and for some it may be, but for me, this was a pretty amazing experience. It took me some time to gather my thoughts for this review too, since I wasn't really sure how to put a video together for it. Unfortunately, the movie is so obscure that there isn't really much footage available, or even that many pictures online. In all honesty though, if I could, I would mash together a bunch of my favorite scenes or do a whole commentary track. Believe me, I was extremely surprised. If you've been following my channel, you'll probably pick up on the fact that I love cinema. However, I haven't discussed my fascination, admiration, and pure interest in the unique formula of guilty pleasures, camp, and that so bad it's good movie concept. It may not make much sense, but it's clearly some kind of phenomenon from everything from Mystery Science Theater and beyond. I think there are many flavors of this, but I've come to accept that most people who try to make movies probably enjoy them, at least ideally, on some level, and want to add something to the medium. In some ways, there is something truly admirable about people with little or no money trying to tell a story the best way they can. Now, I think it's important to judge things in context, so it's not really fair to hold some film made on a minuscule amount of money against a big studio production. Still, this doesn't mean that all films, even at this level, are of the same quality. Just because a movie has limited resources doesn't necessarily give it a pass on everything, and it also doesn't mean that it's so bad it's good. That's the secret formula that still eludes me. When it comes to Dark Harvest though, I think this is, without a doubt, one of the best no-budget movies I've ever seen. People talk about Manos' Hands of Fate, Santa Claus vs. the Martians, and The Room all the time. While I'm not sure it's quite that legendary, this is a movie that should be better known in the low-budget, good-bad movie cult classic conversations. Seriously, this had so many good opportunities for commentary, jokes, and rules for a drinking game with friends. Even watching it by myself, I was really thoroughly entertained for most of the runtime. However, it's not really because the movie was so gloriously bad in a way that wasn't self-aware, which I guess in a way kind of makes it a less awesomely bad movie. You see, part of the charm of watching this film is how clearly the creators cared about the project. It follows the standard slasher tropes, but there is a decent setup. Characters have their archetypes with notable personalities for a slasher movie. Actual character arcs for some, and even some thematic elements. Of course, these are all rather basic and pretty roughly delivered a lot of the time, but it was all there and compelling enough. The quality of the production was also pretty rough around the edges, but mostly worked. There was choppy editing, varying sound quality, limited locations, often stiff acting and cheesy dialogue. However, it was clear that the writers and actors were both aware of the horror tropes they were trying to convey, and also having fun with the silliness of the production. Despite this though, some dramatic and creepy moments, particularly one with an old woman towards the beginning of the film, who kind of alludes to the old curse of the family, worked pretty well. In fact, some of the actors were okay. But what is actually really cool about this film are the special effects. Well, not the scarecrow monsters. I mean, they're fun, but they're just a couple of dudes in masks from Spencer's or something running around. It's pretty hilarious. The gore effects are honestly really impressive for the budget, and the movie seems to have been made with the sole purpose, other than having fun with the director and his friends, to try and make some good effects. Every time a knife goes through someone or a limb gets cut off, it looks pretty good. Not to say that every effect or stunt is done excellently, but there were some decent ones in there. The music is also pretty good too, although they use basically the same creepy track with a few notes over and over and over again, but it is a good track. The end credits are actually a nice treat as well, as they include some of the stunts and behind the scenes stuff. The best one being when they try to light one dummy on fire, but it takes a really long time as the actor has a hard time starting a match. Then when it finally does catch, one of the filmmakers is urged to get out of the frame, as they clearly only have one chance to make this work. That's what I mean. This group of actors had very limited resources, but put together a pretty good effort into making a fun, cheesy horror movie. I had a good time watching it, both for the various goofs and questionable choices, but also for the little joys of seeing something when it worked pretty well. I'd watch it again for sure, though maybe with some friends or some alcohol next time. If you like super low budget camp, you'll probably get a kick out of this. Alright everyone, be well and stay magical.